Hey, moms.
Hey, daughter.
Sabrina's going to share a quote.
The best love is the kind that awakens the soul and makes us reach for more.
Welcome to the Juggle Is Real,
A mom and daughter show
parenting and mental health
for moms and teens.
episode.
20.
So we're going to take a pause from the 4-part series that we launched in 2025. It's a 4-part series of how to support other moms and daughters to create that sense of clarity on what we get to create this year. And the very first 2 episodes that we shared was how to get really clear on your relationships. And then the second one was last week. And I want to thank that mother-daughter duo who supported us, Miss Christiana and Luna. And we talked about how to create clarity in what we get to create in our professional life and in our student life. And why I wanted to take a pause for this episode is because I wanted to share how we have been implementing what we have decided. This is the idea that we get to decide what we want to create. This is a life by design. Otherwise, it becomes life by just a sort of programming, a life by autopilot. And what was that question, Sabrina, that I asked? Do you remember, like, how to start? Like, what wouldn't it be so?
Wouldn't it be great
Wouldn't it be great if? And one of the things that you said, wouldn't it be great if what?
if we went out to breakfast
Yeah.
once a month?
Yes. So we did that. We did that last week. And it wasn't like this big glamorous breakfast. And even though it was fairly short, there's intentionality to it. But that's why when we voice it, like, I know that's important to her. And what was also important to me is that I said, and it wasn't even so much as, wouldn't it be great if? I actually declared in 2025, I'm so happy and grateful that I'm on season 4 of the Gilmore Girls with Sabrina. And to me, when I set out the vision for 2025, it's more of what's that feeling, that I get to create. And that's time spent with you, with things that you like to do.
Mhm.
And just, again, there's the intentionality piece to it. But we took a pivot and we didn't watch the Gilmore Girls. So what did we watch?
We watched The Notebook.
And that's the quote from The Notebook. So let me set the scene. It was Saturday, I'm post-call. Dad's working at the hospital. Our oldest is back to college, and our youngest is away at a sleepover. So it was just Sabrina and I. And she says,
Do you want to watch The Notebook?
do you want to watch The Notebook? And I remember seeing it. I mean, it's a classic love story. And it was cute. We're eating dinner together and we're watching the movie. And the reason why I wanted to bring it up, because there's those awkward scenes, right, that you're watching with your daughter. And I'll be specific. So again, we're on the show to have these tough conversations. And a tough conversation is to talk about romance. It's a talk about intimacy. It's a talk about sex, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the first thing that I want to do is to really normalize, right, why these conversations are awkward, right? And what's really interesting, Sabrina, is that because this is a parenting and mental health show, I'm reaching over. So if you're on YouTube watching me, you're seeing me reach over, and we've been sharing about this emotional wheel that's been helpful. And it's a wheel to help you get clear on your emotions. So when most of us primarily go to 6 primary emotions, right?
Mhm.
Fear, anger, sadness, but when you can get more detailed, get more granular, it's going to support you in really understanding, like, what's going on with how you're thinking, how you're feeling, and most importantly, the sensations, the feelings in your body. But what's so interesting, Sabrina, it's awkward wasn't in there. And that's kind of how I was feeling. How were you feeling?
You think
You're feeling awkward too. Okay, so let's go back for anybody who doesn't know what The Notebook is. What's The Notebook about?
It's about these 2 teenagers who fall in love, but then they lose contact. And after many years, they find each other again.
They have like a sizzling summer romance, okay? So they have a sizzling summer romance, and it's the classic timeless romantic movie where they're high schoolers, right? Because she goes off to college, right? So high school, your age, and they have this intense romance, summer fling.
Mhm.
And then they were met with these different kind of pressures, including societal pressures, like parenting. Parents didn't approve of him, and then because they were different social statuses. And there are other things along the way that also are just really good topics to talk about, tough conversations. And again, why it's so cool to have this show is, y'all, I don't know if I would have this conversation with you, right? And so what I wanted to do, because you can even hear it in my voice, like I'm a little nervous right now having this with you. How I feel I can support myself and us and having this conversation and other moms is again really normalizing it. This is why I think the emotional wheel is really cool. So when we
Mhm.
look to it, we don't feel so isolated in our emotions, even though this emotional wheel doesn't have awkward in here. But then again, when we start to normalize things, it starts to create that sense of safety in our body so we can go ahead and have this tough conversation. And so, one, why I think people don't have this one is because, yeah, it is awkward and it is uncomfortable. And then I think it's because, especially, like, I never had this conversation with my mom. And it's kind of like money, and money is going to be something that we're going to talk about next week for our third part of our series. You just don't talk about it in public. It's just something that I was taught we don't talk about in public. And so when you don't talk about things in public, I don't want to say it's secrecy, but there's boundaries to it, right? There's definitely trickier emotions with that. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. It's very no one really talks about it. It's
What?
very private.
Private?
Mm.
But you talk about it with your friends, right?
I don't do.
You don't? Okay. Yeah, you don't really talk about that. Okay. So again, y'all, lovely listeners and viewers, we're on YouTube. So you get to see again how emotions create these chemical reactions in our body. Right. And that's how we get to really learn about how we are feeling, how we're thinking, and how it's coming through like in our body.
Mhm.
So awkwardness and a sense of uncomfortable feeling in your body comes out as flushed. Flushed. All right. I'll say too, I think another reason why these conversations are tough, I think there's fear of giving too much information, right? So this is something that I've looked at because you can see here on YouTube of how to have this conversation here. So the first thing is one to say one, yeah, it's awkward, it's uncomfortable. Let's normalize that, right?
Mm.
Two is fear of me giving too much information, like talking about this. And when I do, I don't want you to think I'm encouraging you. Right. Not that I don't want you to have a beautiful relationship that feels super romantic or anything like that, but I certainly am not like, "Oh, I love that. Yeah, go for it." Okay? So, like, this is a conversation that I'm still, like, working on having, right? So, I think a way to be able to have this conversation is to be able to frame it as education, but in the right setting. Like, could you imagine if I paused would would been like, "Let's have a let's have a sex 101 talk, a biology talk," but no, again, I get to use this show as to be able to have an educational piece to it, and we'll see where this goes, right? I think another reason why it's hard to have these conversations is because we obviously have differences and uniqueness, and we've talked about this before. We're gonna have generational differences. So I grew up differently. We're having a conversation right now about it. There's obviously a generational difference too, because my mom and I never talked about it. And so I'm just really learning here as a solution to be very curious, come with questions and yes, have a show to be able to hold yourself accountable to have this conversation. Another reason why I think it's challenging to have this conversation is there's fear of me being judged, of just having to divulge like my own history. What if you ask the question and I share something? Maybe you're going to judge me about that. So there's that flip side to it, right? Of owning up to my own history. Okay. There's 10 of these. Fifth reason why I think it's really challenging to have these conversations, there's definitely a lack of confidence. Look, I don't know how to have these conversations, a lack of knowledge about how to be able to share it with you that it's going to land in a way that is going to be that fine balance that I would hope to give it to you with education and also messaging with values that are important to me, hopefully not imposing my own. So there's definitely this lack of confidence and knowledge of that. Sixth reason is fear of overstepping boundaries, right? So like I don't want you to think that when we have these conversations that all of a sudden we're like friends. Or on the opposite too, I'm being too pushy and I want to be your friend,
Mhm.
right? So that brings up to another one. Another reason is that I would fear that I would lose my authority,
Mhm.
right? Another reason is I think people come in there with their own baggage, and that can start to trigger their own. So really know that we have to be aware, which when most of our programming, and we talked about how most of us live in this autopilot kind of way, most of our baggage, most of our triggers are unconscious to us. So there is a fear of me surfacing that and having you being exposed to that, right? And
Mhm.
then how that's going to impact you. And I like this reason. This is like a ninth reason. I've lost count. So if I'm off, please forgive me. There is a lack of a starting point, right? So where to start. Again, like I'm not going to start like during the show.
Mhm.
And not many people have a show to hold themselves accountable. But here we are. So let's get to it, right?
Okay.
So let's start talking about it. So that romance was pretty intense, don't you think?
But yeah.
Okay. So what?
Well, yeah.
So what'd you think about it?
Good for them.
Mhm. What? Good for what? Does it get you thinking of the kind of relationship that you would want? What? No, no, no. Okay, so I think this is really good because when we talked about vision boarding, about our relationships, and I talked the way that I was encouraging it was to talk about it. This is during the episode about our relationship, extended family, relationship with friends. And then, obviously, I talk about my relationship with dad.
Mhm.
That's obviously on my vision board for 2025. Is there a vision board for you for a boyfriend? I mean, you're going to be 16 years old. We know that you like boys. This is why we're here on the show, right? I mean, you snuck 2 coins in, right? So,
That's what's the show.
that's why so I know. Okay, but like, so, and you don't have to say who, but we're
Leon.
frankly, okay, but this is what I really want to encourage you to do, which is going to help support this overall conversation, right? Is because it's just like us not watching Gilmore Girls. It's about really getting clear on the kind of relationship you want. I know I was cultivating a kind of relationship that in the past of like what made us feel close. And again, I was watching Gilmore Girls, but it's not going to be the exact thing, but it's always going to be that feeling that you are seeking, right? So I'm seeking that closeness of watching something with you. And so,
Mhm.
yes, it was a notebook. Also, with like a boy, you have an image in mind of what you want a relationship to be. This kind of goes back to last week when I say successful. Successful is like holistic, right? Like,
Mhm.
like a boy that you probably find attractive, a boy that you probably can have good conversations with, a boy that you can have fun with, like
Mhm.
the holistic different pieces of that. So, like, what can I just ask you, like, what's your type? What's your type, right? Okay, can I go back to this? Sabrina's
Yeah.
got a cold here. So, my son was home for Christmas break and he had a girlfriend. He went off to college freshman year this past year and he had a girlfriend. And then they
Mhm.
broke up. And then over Christmas, he said that he was seeing somebody. So he brought his new girlfriend over. And what did you say?
They look exactly the same.
What?
They look exactly the same.
But you said he has a type.
Yeah.
He has a type. Okay. And maybe you don't want to share that type because that's going to give
Yeah.
away too much. But like, what is that, like that feeling of, am I, do you understand what
Yeah,
I'm
I can
saying?
describe it. Preferably athletic and tall,
Okay.
funny,
Hmm.
sort of smart, and wants to go to college. Like, they don't have to be, like, nerdy smart, but
Is that a new word?
what?
Smirk?
Smart.
I thought there was a Gen Z word. Smirk. Okay.
What
Smart,
what have I said?
athletic, funny, smart, but doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm going to Harvard smart,
Yeah.
but smart.
Have good relationships with family
Oh, yeah.
and preferably believe in the Lord.
You
I
believe,
feel like that's really important to me.
yes. Okay. So that gives you a foundation, right?
Mm.
So when you enter into any relationship, that becomes your intuitive, I would say, check in with yourself,
Mhm.
right? Because I think so much about with relationships and, intimate relationships is knowing, is it a match to your values,
Mhm.
right? What else do you want to share with that?
I can't really say anything else.
Okay. All right. Oops. What did you feel about the intensity of that?
It was a little much.
It was a little much?
Well, I feel like it went well with the storyline.
Okay, so we were talking about the intensity of
Mhm.
the relationship, and I wanted to go a little bit more about that. Go back to that quote. What was that quote?
The best love is the kind that awakens the soul and makes us reach for more.
What do you think of that quote?
I think it's really sweet.
What?
I
Yeah.
think it's really sweet.
So we crave that. We crave that kind of relationship. We crave that
Mhm.
kind of love. And what I wanted to say here is that there was an intensity to that relationship, right?
Yeah.
It's like a first love kind of intensity. But in that movie, the intensity of that stayed throughout their life because they were separated, right?
Mhm.
And they were separated through the complexity of how relationships can be, the complexity of how emotions can be. And so one of the things that had happened in that, like, what did you think about the their parents not approving of that relationship?
I thought that was pretty evil.
It's pretty evil.
Yeah, because I feel like if I'm happy, you're happy. So it's just really heartbreaking to see them being torn apart.
It is, yeah. But I'll say it's a real thing, and I'll say it for me. I experienced it too. So this is again like well, here's my own little baggage to this, right?
Mhm.
Is because growing up a minority here, I remember one of my relationships, a relationship that I was deeply involved in, and his mom was worried about if we had kids, how they would be accepted because he was white
Mhm.
and I wasn't, right? And so the complexity of relationships, it's a true thing. It's a very much a lived experience. So I think there's just a lot of different factors to get really clear again on what it is that we want in a relationship so that no matter what the circumstances are, whether it's mom and dad or it's, society or just culture in general, those are the kind of things that when we get so grounded and centered in our own core values, it's easier to navigate like these trickier
Mhm.
conversations. So I wanted to end with a fun little game.
Okay.
Okay. So this is a would you rather love edition. A would you rather love edition.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, would you rather have a great first love but lose it or never fall in love until you're older?
Never fall in love until I'm old.
Really? Okay. Would you rather have a partner who's super romantic but unreliable
Mm.
or someone stable but not very expressive?
Um, Someone who's stable because then I know that he can provide for my family.
Uh-huh. And you can work on
See?
on communication?
Mhm.
Cool. Would you rather date someone your parents love but you're unsure about or someone you love but your parents disapprove of?
Someone I love with my parents disapprove. Oh,
Okay, okay. Is there anything else that you wanted to share before
mhm.
we close this awkward conversation?
No, no,
Was it awkward for you?
very.
Really?
Yeah,
Well, so can I ask why is it awkward for you? Because I gave you 10 reasons why it's awkward for moms to have this conversation.
because I feel like it's more difficult to open up to you about this than like my friends.
Well, that's why I just asked you about. I mean, yeah, of course, I would expect for you to have these conversations about boys.
Yeah.
So, what's the dating situation at your high school
For me,
in general?
some people are in relationships,
Mm-hmm.
some aren't.
Uh huh. That's actually one thing that I wanted to talk
Yeah.
about. So, in that movie, what happened in that movie
What do you mean?
when they reconnected?
She cheated.
She cheated on him.
She was engaged.
She was, yes. How did she feel about that?
I don't think it was the right way to do it
Uh huh.
because she even told her fiance that she was gonna go,
Uh huh.
but that everything was gonna be fine.
Uh huh.
But if she knew, I think she always had a feeling, so break it off.
Break it off
I
in the
feel like just be
beginning.
honest.
Yeah. I love that. And relationships and emotions can be trickier. And I think that having these conversations is a way to support you in developing and cultivating and really growing in that sense of you feeling really clear on what you want in a relationship. So again, it goes back to no matter what the circumstances are that you can't control, you can always control the way that you respond, right?
Yeah.
Hey, all right. Thank you for having this conversation with me. And thank you for going to Starbucks with me last week and for watching The Notebook.
Thanks for paying.
So, we have a request. Please rate, review, subscribe to the show. It helps with visibility of the show so more people can be encouraged to have these conversations. And next week, we will see you for part 3 of our 4-part series. And please comment and let us know if there's any questions that we can support you with. Bye for now.